The movie opens on a seemingly normal night in Seoul. A young girl is anxiously looking around a public park for her favorite doll that she had forgotten to take a few hours ago. She luckily finds it lying on the grass and informs her mother about it. This is when the night turns from normal to really weird. As the girl and her mother are about to return home, they notice a colossal monster walking between the nearby buildings. The girl screams in horror, and the monster turns around, absent-mindedly looking at her general direction. The scene abruptly shifts to 25 years later as a down-on-her-luck and out-of-work writer, Gloria, returns to her boyfriend's apartment in New York. She sheepishly enters through the front door, looking extremely shabby and hungover. That is because she has been partying and drinking all night long. However, her boyfriend, Tim, who has seen her alcohol-fueled night outs all too often, puts the gauntlet down. He plainly tells her that she's an out-of-control mess and gestures to the bedroom where all of her things are already neatly packed away. Tim then heads to work after telling her that she'd better be gone by the time he returns. With nowhere to go and no one to rely on, Gloria is forced to return to her childhood home in Mainhead, New Hampshire. Her parents have already passed away, and the house is empty, with not even a single piece of furniture around. Hence, Gloria is forced to sleep on the floor for the night. Gloria is such an alcoholic that she doesn't know you can sell houses. Early the next morning, she heads to a local store and buys an air mattress. She is dragging it home when a truck pulls up right next to her. To her utter surprise, it's her childhood friend Oscar, who is extremely delighted to see her back in town. He gives her a lift, and they end up hanging out at Oscar's bar, which he inherited from his father. Gloria is unnerved by the amount of alcohol on display, as she's trying to abstain from drinking. As they're chatting away, it takes a lot of mental strength to keep her mind off of alcohol, and she begins scratching the top of her head mindlessly. Seeing this, a bemused Oscar asks what she's doing, to which Gloria replies that it's a nervous tic. Eventually, she ends up downing a few bottles of beer along with Oscar and his friends. He tells his buddies Garth and Joel that back in elementary school, Gloria would always win the annual short story writing competition, while he would always end up in second place. This seems like an innocent, nostalgic observation, but deep down, Oscar seems to have some sort of an inferiority complex. Things get slightly awkward when he goes to get another beer and returns only to see a drunk Joel trying to kiss Gloria. Oscar freaks out, grabs his keys, and leaves in a hurry. A tipsy Gloria then has to lug her mattress back home. On the way, she drags it through her old elementary school playground. She eventually manages to make it home by late morning and immediately dozes off on her new mattress. A few hours later, Gloria wakes up to a phone call from her sister, who tells her that the city of Seoul suffered a monster attack in the night. A confused Gloria quickly pulls up the news articles on her laptop. Sure enough, there's footage of a giant monster appearing in Seoul for a few seconds before disappearing again. She calls her boyfriend Tim, but he inquires why she's hearing about it now when the attack happened 9 hours ago. Gloria tries to evade the question, but Tim figures out that it's because she was drinking all night and begs her to seek professional help for alcoholism. Contrary to that suggestion, Gloria is out drinking again, and late at night, she ends up falling asleep on a bench at the elementary school playground. The very next morning, around 8 a.m., she gets up and tries to call Tim. The latter picks up, but when he realizes that Gloria is still intoxicated, he hangs up. That afternoon, Oscar brings her an old TV, and they drag it into the empty living room. He then informs her that the monster attacked Seoul again last night, but instead of walking around like the previous night, it just stood in one place and made weird hand gestures. Godzilla has learned sign language. It is also revealed that the monster always materializes at the same time, 8:05 a.m. Nonetheless, Oscar shifts the topic and offers her a job at the bar while she's in town. Gloria, who has nothing else to do, accepts it and thanks him for being so kind to her. As the two friends hug, Gloria notices something weird in Oscar's pants and on the television. News footage shows the monster scratching its head exactly the same way that she does when she's nervous. This continues to eat her from within as that night, while working at the bar, Gloria sees more footage of the attack. She can't help but notice that the monster looks as if it was on a phone, just like she was around 8 a.m. last morning. Once she is back home, Gloria looks up more footage on that monster. She notices that in the first sighting it looked like it was lugging something along on its shoulder. This is identical to the way Gloria did when she took her mattress home. As days pass by, she starts getting more and more anxious. Gloria spends days formulating her theories, charting maps of Seoul and the monster's movements. One day, with a map in hand and entirely sober, However, she heads to the elementary school playground and steps inside at exactly 8:05 a.m. She doesn't move forward. Instead, she raises her arms above her head before rushing back home. Once Gloria is in her living room, she turns on the TV and sure enough, the creature has made another appearance in Seoul. This time, it didn't destroy any buildings. It just stood there and raised its arms over its head, exactly like Gloria did. This puts it beyond any doubt that she's the monster that's been terrorizing Seoul. That night, after work, Gloria impulsively decides to reveal her newfound secret to her friends at the bar. She makes the group drive down to the playground and pull out a live feed of Seoul. They then watch the live stream while she steps into the playground and starts to dance. Sure enough, the monster appears in Seoul, mimicking her movements. Suddenly, two NATO attack helicopters arrive at the monster's location and fire missiles. Gloria can simultaneously feel a strong stinging sensation on her body back in New Hampshire. However, in her drunken stupor, she punches the air around her, which destroys one of the helicopters back in Seoul. Gloria immediately realizes that she just killed whoever was in that helicopter. She thus freaks out, leading her to accidentally lose her footing and fall to the ground. Sometime later, she wakes up in her house to the sounds of destruction on her TV. Oscar, who had arrived a few moments ago, is holding a bag of groceries for her. She feels terrible and wants to go to the police station to turn herself in, but Oscar stops her and hands her today's newspaper. We then find out that last night, when Gloria fell, something strange happened. A robot monster appeared in Seoul right at the exact moment that Oscar stepped into the playground to help her. Next, they go to a nearby diner for breakfast to discuss their predicament. It seems that the monsters only show up for Gloria and Oscar. She pieces together that the last monster appearance 25 years ago must have been on the day when she was walking to the elementary school as a kid. Back then, there wasn't a playground, but a construction site with garbage and trees. Gloria has a flashback, and she remembers her younger self walking to school with a project in hand. A young Oscar was right behind her, holding his own project. In the morning, the two wait on the playground's bench for the clock to strike 8:05 a.m. The right time arrives, and Gloria gets in the playground, which causes that monster to materialize. She then bends down and writes an apology message in Korean onto the ground, promising that the monster won't return again. Later that night at the bar, the news shows the footage of the monster's apologetic writing in Seoul. After closing up the bar for the day, Gloria and Joel sneak out to spend the night together. The next day, when she heads home, Gloria sees on the news that the robot monster is in Seoul, taunting the locals. At least we don't see the Kaiju in Missionary. This freaks her out, so she grabs Joel and quickly drives to the playground. Upon arriving, they see a drunk Oscar watching the live stream of Seoul. Gloria angrily tells him to stop it, but Oscar retorts that he hasn't killed anyone, unlike her. Nonetheless, she walks into the playground and slaps him to bring him back to his senses. However, that night, as they're closing their shift at the bar, Oscar is upset about the incident. Videos of his robot being slapped by Gloria's monster are viral, making him feel mocked. He chugs down a few bottles of beer and then berates his friend, Garth. In a rather rude way, he yells out loud that Garth is a cocaine addict. If he goes to the playground, he'll show up in Seoul as King Dora, and then bosses Gloria around. It is also revealed that Gloria hasn't been drinking for a few days now, as she is scared that she'll end up drunk in the playground. Oscar takes this as a personal attack, so he puts down a beer and tells her that if she doesn't drink it, he'll take a walk through the playground later. However, the plan doesn't work, as Gloria takes that drink and pours it on the floor. Seconds later, Oscar gets into his truck and goes to the playground. Gloria tries to stop him, but he yells back and drives away. This prompts her to chase him on foot, and they both end up in the playground at 8:05. Once there, she punches him, and they get into a scuffle. An enraged Gloria shouts that she is quitting her job at the bar, but Oscar pushes her down and threatens her to come back the next day. If she doesn't, he'll destroy a whole neighborhood full of innocent people. Oh, this movie is an analogy for being an asshole. Sometime later, an exhausted Gloria is trying to sleep in her home when she begins to have flashbacks. She remembers what she was doing that day 25 years ago when that monster first showed up. Turns out she was walking to school with a cardboard model of Seoul in her hands until it flew away in a gust of wind. A little Oscar, who was right with her, then climbed a fence into a construction site after her model. But her train of thought is interrupted by Joel, who arrives on her doorstep with a truckload of furniture. He claims that these are from Oscar, who is sorry for what happened the night before. Gloria doesn't know what to make of this, so she runs to Oscar's house to demand an explanation. However, he apologizes for hurting her and starts crying. He asks to be friends with her again, and she accepts, as long as he stops drinking late at night. The surprises don't end there for Gloria, as she receives a call from Tim as soon as he gets back home. Turns out he is staying at a nearby inn and wants to meet her. So, shortly afterwards, Gloria takes him to the bar where he meets Oscar, but Tim instantly becomes jealous as he doesn't like his girlfriend hanging out with other men. On the other hand, Oscar also starts acting weird. He asks Tim what would be the most irresponsible thing to do in a bar. Tim doesn't really know the answer, and so Oscar pulls out a huge firecracker from the back. He lights it up, and as the customers run away, the firecracker explodes. Smoke soon fills the bar, chairs are set on fire, and several things shatter. But luckily, no one is injured. Although everyone watching is stunned as to why Oscar would do such an irresponsible thing, they don't realize that he did all of this to show Tim how crazy he can be if things don't go his way. A shocked Tim then grabs Gloria's hand and tries to make her leave, but she refuses. She knows that if she doesn't stick with Oscar, he'll use his giant robot to destroy Seoul. So Tim drops an ultimatum, stating that he's leaving town tomorrow at midday and hopes that she'll be with him. The nightmare has just started for Gloria, as when she goes home after her shift, she finds a drunk Oscar waiting for her. She tells him to get out, but he refuses, explaining that he's there to make sure that she doesn't leave town with Tim. Unsure of what to do, Gloria scratches her head anxiously. This seems to activate her childhood memories, and she recalls more about that day 25 years ago. We find out that when Oscar climbed the fence to retrieve the miniature replica of Seoul, Gloria sneakily followed him into the site. She watched in horror as Oscar pulled her project down and crushed it. The young Gloria was enraged, and her anger somehow attracted a lightning strike to the area, causing blood to stream from her forehead. The lightning also affected Oscar, and they both fell unconscious. He was holding a toy robot, while she had a little toy monster. Both toys look exactly like the monsters that appeared in Seoul. Neither of them, though, was carrying a Tickle Me Elmo. Thank fuck. Now, Gloria realizes that Oscar hates himself. Hates how his life is so small and uninteresting compared to hers. What does she do? She thus confronts Oscar and then proceeds to call Tim. Simultaneously, they hear alarms ringing on the TV, and both of them realize that it'll soon be 8:05. Oscar rushes for the door, but Gloria strikes him over the head with a chair. This enrages him, and he charges at her with a piece of wood, but she retaliates by making a bookshelf fall on him. Despite all this, Oscar makes a run for it. He leaps from the upstairs window, down to the pool, and into the streets. A chase then ensues, and they both reach the playground shortly afterwards. Unfortunately, Oscar punches Gloria so hard that she falls to the floor and is unable to stop him from destroying an entire neighborhood in Seoul. Defeated and injured, Gloria returns home and crawls into bed. She sees that the maps of Seoul and the playground, which she drew a few weeks ago, have turned upside down. This gives her an idea, so she immediately packs a bag and rushes to the airport. A few hours later, Oscar notices her absence, but he heads to the playground and chugs down several bottles of beer. The scene abruptly shifts, and we see that Gloria has reached Seoul. Soon, the alarms ring, signaling that it's time for monsters to make an appearance. Back in New Hampshire, Oscar steps onto the playground, beginning his robot rampage in Seoul. Korean civilians scatter from this giant robot, but Gloria walks closer to it. Back on the playground, Oscar suddenly hears a distant rumbling as Gloria walks closer to the robot. In a shocking twist, her monster has appeared in her hometown, right in front of Oscar. He tries to run, but Gloria rushes forward and gets a hold of Oscar. As a result, his giant robot monster floats as if it's being picked up by invisible hands. Realizing that there is nowhere to run, Oscar begs to be put down, but Gloria's monster yeets his ass. This causes the robot monster in Seoul to be thrown thousands of feet away. The citizens of Korea rejoice, believing that the robot is now dead and won't harm them anymore. The movie ends as Gloria steps into a Korean bar and asks the bartender if she'd like to hear an amazing story.